Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Still Curtain podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Jaggi, editor of StillCurtain.com. And joining me, as always, is Still Curtain contributor Shayne Kubas. Shayne, we've got some stuff to talk about today. An ugly Steelers loss on Sunday Night Football. We'll get to that, obviously. Aaron Rodgers, is he becoming a problem? Like, we're breaking this down now, and we're kind of looking at the parallels between Rodgers and Russell Wilson. That's our big topic for today. We're going to share that, so stick with us there. We're going to talk about the Steelers wide receiver issue. I know fans are furious about that because of the botched opportunity, if you will, at the trade deadline. But does a demotion need to take place? What changes need to take place at the wide receiver position? Shayne, we're also going to give our predictions for Steelers versus Bengals week 11. Are they going to get that redemption game against what we would like to call an inferior opponent, but the Steelers don't have that privilege because they lost to them the first time around, Shayne?
Yeah, exactly. They already did lose to that team, and we'll talk about how they can hopefully rectify that mistake, losing to them. And obviously, Thursday night road game, we know that doesn't really work for Mike Tomlin, and really most coaches, I'm sure, don't have a great record in those scenarios, but especially Mike Tomlin just isn't really able to get those done. But hopefully this time around, things will change.
All right, let's talk about that Sunday Night Football loss. Not the way I expected this game to go. I think you and I both predicted like a field goal type game. I think you said 24-20. I said 24-21.
Yeah.
We thought the Steelers would pull this one out. I mean, the Chargers without their bookend offensive tackles,
both of them.
The players that they had starting on the offensive line were like the worst graded offensive linemen at the position in the NFL. They showed that graphic during the game. The Steelers had some competitive advantages in this contest, but it fell flat. And it's hard not to point the finger at Aaron Rodgers in this game. Just an abysmal performance, which we'll get to that a little bit later here. But what are your overall takeaways, Shayne, from this disheartening 25-10 loss? And really, let's call it for what it is. It was a 25-3 loss. I mean, that garbage time touchdown at the end, can't even count that.
Yeah, it's really not that worth even talking about that touchdown. Although I will technically a little bit later, but we'll save that for later. This just from the get-go just felt like one of those games where Rodgers just simply didn't have it. And again, we're going to have a longer conversation about him later in the show, but he was very clearly rattled from the start, and I don't really understand why. I mean, the offensive line, definitely like Broderick Jones and Spencer Anderson, I would say both struggled in pass protection throughout the night, but it wasn't really anything worse than he's used to, right? Like, it wasn't like it was that bad compared to other games, really, especially the other side of the line was pretty good, including center Zach Frazier. So it felt like from the get-go, the offense had nothing going on in the passing game, and the defense, to its credit, did really hold up for a long time. But eventually, any defense that has dealing with an offense like the Steelers put out there is going to fall apart eventually. Just is going to happen.
Yeah, Shayne, and this is nothing new than what we've seen over the years with the Steelers. You can go back to 2019, 2020, where the defense holds the opponent in check for 3/4 of the game, and then they suddenly are gassed and they fall apart at the end. I mean, when are we going to escape this offense purgatory where they just can't get out of the gutter here just when it looks like things are getting optimistic? We'll talk about that a little bit here when we do our Steelers Chargers breakdown. A Steelers signed Asante Samuel to their practice squad, I might say.
Yeah.
But Samuel, one of the most respected free agents on the market this year, did have to have the spinal fusion surgery, and that was raised a lot of red flags there. What's his availability going to be like? How is he going to be after having this surgery? Obviously, before that, he was a former second-round pick of the LA Chargers, 47th overall. Not a pretty solid cornerback overall. Some people might not realize plays almost exclusively on the boundary, despite his size at 5'10", 180 pounds, soaking wet. But what does that mean for a guy like Darius Slay? Like if Samuel can be that guy, if he can prove that he's the corner that the Steelers have been looking for, the hot market name out there, one of the few names left, still in his prime, if he can show that he's still got it in him, get back up to speed here in the next couple of weeks, what does that mean for this secondary? Are we looking at a potential starter here, Shayne, or is it too early to say?
I think if he is actually fully healthy, right, with spinal fusion, like Our team doctor did his surgery, so again, we knew more about it than anyone else because of that. I think that played a part in him signing with us because I think that there's a comfort level there. But realistically, if he is back to the player that he was, at least from a health perspective, in really 2023 was the last time we saw him fully healthy. 2024, he was kind of banged up before, and then he ultimately had the surgery in the offseason. But if he's that version of himself, then he absolutely is a starter. And he's honestly probably the best corner on the roster, unless you want to count Ramsey as a corner still, but he's obviously moving to safety at this point. To me, I think he'd be the best corner. I know Joey has his ups and downs. That's kind of why I say that. But Samuel, I think, would be at least the most consistent corner on the roster if we get the 2023 version of him.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not hard to see why these corners have fallen flat for the Steelers. Slay has been about as bad as you could have imagined.
Yeah.
Porter has not taken that step up in year 3. It's kind of been a roller coaster this year. Better than last year, but not as good as his rookie year. And so that's what you hope to see. So I don't disagree with you there, Shayne. Samuel is just on the practice squad, though. And there's always a chance that someone can come by, snatch him away. Obviously, he chose the Steelers for a reason. They probably gave him the assurance that he's going to get promoted here as soon as he gets up to speed. We saw the same kind of path taken with Kyle Duggar after the Steelers traded for him, just very briefly on the practice squad, and then that got that promotion there. But we'll see where this progresses. I think it's at least encouraging to know that they're trying to fix the cornerback position. Shayne, let's talk about Will Howard very briefly here. Has been promoted off of IR, now on the 53-man roster for the Steelers, a move that fans were waiting for. And I mean, you can be banging the table for Howard as much as you want. He's not going to start this year at all. He might not play this year. He might not see the field at all, but there's always a chance late in the season, if the Steelers are either out of it already, or if they've already locked up a playoff spot, the last game doesn't mean anything. Maybe they throw him out there. At the very least, nice to know that he's trending back in the right direction. Still has 3 years left on that rookie contract. But either way, he's back on the team now.
Yeah, and he'll be obviously the third quarterback, emergency third quarterback that, like, technically I don't think counts as a roster spot now. Like, that rule is kind of weird. I don't pay attention to it much anymore. But that's what I assume he'll be. And again, at some point, could we see him? Sure. I mean, if they don't feel like trotting Mason Rudolph out there in a meaningless, like, Week 18 game, if it was, which unfortunately, considering we're playing the Ravens, probably not going to be meaningless, folks. Like, it probably won't be. Spoiler alert on that. But I think that if there's a scenario where someone could come in and, like, garbage time or whatever, maybe he gets, the backup job a week or two this year. I still think that if he wants a chance to see the field in any capacity or even really be active, probably not until next year.
I would agree, Shayne. The Steelers are going to be in it until the bitter end, and we know
they
that
always are.
based on the past. All right, you're tuned into the Still Curtain podcast, where Steelers fans come to talk, celebrate, and debate. For more coverage, hit up stillcurtain.com, powered by the passionate fans at Fansided. All right, Shayne, let's talk Steelers versus Chargers, our notes and takeaways from Week 10, and we'll kick it over to the offense. We're going to breeze past Aaron Rodgers for now because he's our big discussion topic for today. Running game, it was working, but they couldn't stick with it. And I think that Tomlin was asked about this, took some criticism, and he was really short with the media this week. And you can understand his frustration. And I understand where Tomlin was coming from, is that you kind of couldn't afford to stick with the running game once you get down a few scores. I mean, the Steelers had 3 points in the first 3 quarters of the game. They didn't score until 12 minutes and change in the fourth quarter. Didn't score a touchdown, at least. So they kind of had to abandon the rushing attack in a way. Prior to that, Jaylen Warren had 14 carries for 70 yards. Could they have stuck with it more, Shayne? 5 yards a pop for Jaylen Warren. Caleb Johnson gets 2 carries for 3 yards in this game. Did have a nice run. It was called back, of course, to a penalty. It seemed like that happened a couple times with Johnson already in his limited opportunities. But the running game was working. They just couldn't afford to stick with it against the Chargers.
They couldn't, but also, like, at a certain point, if it's the only thing your offense can do well, I would have just at least tried to keep him involved more in that way, even if it's just like a draw, right? Like, try to catch the defense off guard because they're expecting the pass. See if you can get a 10, 15-yard chunk and it can kind of settle Rodgers down a little bit more. Something like that. But again, I also understand that in a game like that where you've scored 3 points going in the fourth quarter, you can't really afford to waste any time. So there is that element of it. But honestly, my biggest gripe with it, and I understand part of this is because the passing game took over, there is no reason Jalen Warden shouldn't be playing 70% of the snaps for this team. I don't need to see Kenneth Gainwell touch the ball. Again, no offense to him, I don't need to see it. And then Caleb Johnson, if he's never going to get blocking when he gets the ball, I don't need to have him touch the ball either for now. We'll wait till next year on that one at this point. Jalen Warren should be touching the ball 20 times a game. Like he has to. There's nothing else his offense I think can hang its hat on right now except for him bowling balling his way through defenders constantly. Like that's the only thing that they can do well consistently, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers are dead last in the NFL in explosive runs this year. It's not Jalen Warren's fault. If you watch the film, there's just not opportunities there. I think he's been one of the better backs in the league this year in terms of breaking tackles, making something happen out of nothing.
Film is just so fun.
Yeah,
like it is.
He's clearly the best in Pittsburgh's backfield at this point in time. Even Gainwell just as a receiver has been so lackluster, and that's the one thing he was known for. Yeah. Philadelphia being that third down back.
I mean, the targets he's getting, admittedly, not good. They're not good targets.
No, it's not. It makes me wonder too, Shayne, like the limited usage of the running game. 16 carries in this game, 5 yards of carry for Jalen Warren. He was having success. He obviously had the amazing hurdle in this game. That was the highlight play of the entire Steelers offense.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder if the Steelers just kept giving Rodgers that chance after chance. All right, he's going to warm up. He's going to warm up. Fourth quarter comes along. Now we have to pass the ball. So maybe it was one of those situations where it's like, Rodgers didn't turn it around like we expected to. No. And maybe they should have been running the ball more when the Steelers were only down 12-3 in this game.
Right.
That wonky safety and everything that happened. All right, let's talk about the wide receivers here, Shayne. Surprisingly, Roman Wilson co-led the Steelers in receiving 35 yards with DK Metcalf. It only took Wilson 3 targets to get there. Did come in garbage time, though. Had a 27-yard reception late in the game. Don't know why we're kind of not looking his way earlier because this passing game is so stagnant. It's disgusting. I mean, 7 targets for Metcalf and only 35 yards, and he is just falling short of any sort of relevant production for how many games now? They got to get out of this gutter somehow. They didn't do it at the trade deadline. And I'll be very clear here. I do not think that Jacoby Myers would have changed this team. I think that he still probably gets, based on everybody else, he probably gets 3 or 4 targets in this game and doesn't make much of an impact. Like I said on last week's show, Myers went a full month without getting more than 39 receiving yards in a game. So I wouldn't expect that would all of a sudden be the difference in the Steelers-Chargers game. It certainly wouldn't be. But what has to happen here, Shayne? I mean, you just look around the board, and yes, I think the only thing that you can credit Rodgers with and the receivers with in this game is that the ball got spread out, but nobody did anything with it.
Yeah, I think, and I actually wrote about it for this morning on SlickCarton.com, so you guys should check that out. You have to find a way to get Roman Wilson involved in the offense. Like, you just have to. You talked about DK Metcalf on 7 targets, only getting 35 yards. Him and Calvin Austin combined had 14 targets for 49 yards. You can't run an offense like that. You can't funnel 14 targets to 2 guys and they don't get to 50 yards. Like, of course they're not going to win. They're not going to produce. And I'm not saying it's all their fault necessarily. Rodgers certainly had a rough game, both accuracy wise and poise and pretty much everything playing the quarterback position. It was a rough night for him. But Roman Wilson is the only guy on this team right now that could potentially give you a true compliment to DK Metcalf. Calvin is just too inconsistent, and honestly, again, the size profile with him, not that Roman's huge by any means, but he does make Calvin look small still. And everyone kind of makes Calvin look small. I just think that is the path if you want this passing offense to, one, just become easier to run and allow DK to get some of the touches that he was getting earlier in the season that were allowing him to get into space. Teams have kind of realized, hey, if we just take DK out of the game, they don't have any answers right now. They just don't. You need to find that answer. And the only one I think that they could potentially go to at this point is Wilson.
100%, Shayne. We'll get there in just a minute. Yeah. Darnell Washington. That's my other gripe in this game. 1 target in this game and went for 15 yards.
Yeah,
it was a very successful play. Yeah. But Darnell got 25 snaps in this game. And I understand the Steelers offense wasn't on the field a ton. I think it was 56 snaps or something to that tune. But it's not, it's still not enough usage for this guy. He should never leave the field. If you're in 12 or 13 personnel constantly, Darnell should never leave the field. And that, I think that's it. Kind of the game script was dictated by the Steelers being down in this game. Yeah. Why not use him? Use him when you do run the ball, or use him to help you down the seam. He can do those things for you. And the record still stands, Shane. The Steelers are 8-0 when Darnell plays more than 40 snaps in a game. Got 25 in this one. Didn't even come close to that. His lowest snaps in several weeks now. And Steelers offense just didn't have any success.
No, we've seen the resurgence of like passing games that are run out of heavy personnel this year. Like teams have a massive jump in EPA when they throw the ball out of heavy personnel, because obviously defenses are adjusting to that heavy personnel with the expectation that the run game is coming. And so they can play action off of it, get those chunk plays. And Darnell is obviously, he's not a minus in the receiving game. Like he does things well as a receiver beyond just the like gimmicky stuff that we'll do with him sometimes, or like the goal line fades that recently haven't worked, but have worked before this year. Like he's usable in the passing game, and having him in there just makes defenses have to honor the run game, because if you don't against him when he's out there, you could get bowled over very quickly, right? You just could. So I think that they need to keep him in, even if they are trying to go pass heavy, just because it's not like the other tight ends are doing enough to really take him off the field anyway.
And Shane, Calvin Austin, I think this might have been the worst game of his NFL career. 2 catches for 14 yards on 7 targets.
Run, yeah, for sure.
Had 2 passes. 2 of the few good passes Rodgers threw in this game bounced off of his hands. One went for an interception late in the contest. It was just a really pitiful performance overall. And you can't, if you are that small, if you're 5'7" 3/4", 170 pounds, you better walk on water as a wide receiver, because you can't afford room for error. Your catch radius is small enough. When you ball gets put on you, you got to catch it. And so this is one of the gripes I have with Austin. A little bit inconsistent at times. I think he's a pretty natural receiver for the most part, but this was a very forgettable performance by him.
Yeah, it's, again, like we'll talk about him a little bit more later too, but like just not enough from your top 2 receivers in this game if you're going to have a chance to win, regardless of Rodgers playing poorly or not.
And for what it's worth, Shane, the 2 worst graded players on the Steelers this week, according to Pro Football Focus, Aaron Rodgers with a 35.3 grade, Calvin Austin with a 37.2 grade. I can tell you for sure after watching the All-22, the film matches those grades. Let's move over to the defensive side of the football and talk about the edge rushers here in the defensive line. These guys did what they were supposed to do in this game.
Yeah, they got a lot of hits on Herbert.
They did. They got him really rattled. Over a 42% pressure rate in this game, despite Herbert getting rid of the ball in about 2.5 seconds. This was as good as you could have asked for. They just didn't get aided by the offense like they needed to in this game, unfortunately. I think that the edge rushers had a really good contest. Alex Highsmith, another really good game for him.
Yeah, like the edge rushers were as good as you could expect them to be against a team that doesn't have any offensive tackles, right? Like, sure, like, could they have been even better? I guess. But, like, at some point when you're getting, like, well, I think it was, 9 or 10 quarterback hits, 4 sacks. Like, if you get that, you're always happy with those numbers. Like, there's nothing – I don't care who you're playing, right? It just, again, like, it didn't matter because they could just be patient with it. Like, they ran the ball, even though it wasn't very effective most of the game until late. They kept it up in the passing game with quick passes and were able to extend some drives. And at some point, if you allow 12 points through most of the game and then eventually the dam breaks, like, that's not their fault. They just ran out of gas, realistically. And that's what happens when your offense puts up 3 points through what, it was 48 minutes of game time.
Yeah, it truly was the case, Shane. The interior defensive line, Cameron Hayward was a stud, obviously. He continues to be just golden even in his old age. The one guy, though, Shane, I want to, and Keanu Benton had another really nice game for him. He's playing the best stretch of football in his career. That's a very encouraging sign, especially with a contract looming, I think, next year. And I mean, at this rate, I mean, I can't see any reason why the Steelers wouldn't want to pay him, have him stick around. He's 24 years old. So he's turning into the player that you'd hoped he'd be, and hoping that trend continues. Y.A. Black, though, Shane, is the name that I want to highlight here for a second, because I didn't notice him too much on film during the game. Obviously, we've got a lot going on, watching a lot of players. Went back and watched his film. It was really impressive. And this guy's never going to be like an elite pressure player on the quarterback because he's just not going to get there fast enough. But he got there a few times. But it was his run defense, though, was phenomenal in this game. You watch him 2-gap, stack and shed blocks. Like, he did that 3 or 4 times at a really high level, ended up earning a 91 grade from PFF in this game. And I was really impressed. I cut up his highlights on my X account. You can go check that out. But really good game for YA Black, and maybe starting to be a little bit more heavily involved in that rotation now.
Yeah, I think he needs to be, just keeping all these guys fresh to a certain degree. Like Derek Harmon had a good day in run defense too. Pass rush really wasn't there too much for him, but again, he's a young player, so we'll come along with that. If Black and him both can be like the primary defensive tackles, especially if Benton isn't retained, but even if he is, like if Benton, him, and Black can be those three when Cam eventually does call it quits, that's a good three if they're playing at the level that I think they can reach. So it's good to see him get more run, and I think that especially in run defense, he's going to be really valuable down the stretch.
All right, Shayne, let's talk about the linebackers here for a second.
Yeah.
Not an egregious game by either one, just kind of it didn't really stand out in a positive or negative light in this game. I think the best thing that happened for the Steelers defense in this game, other than getting rapid pressure on Justin Herbert, is the fact that they held Keenan Allen in check to just 19 yards on 5 targets. You can credit the linebackers a little bit there. Safety play. The problem is Ladd McConkey got his, and on 6 targets got 107 yards, was killed down the seam, killed the Steelers defense down the seam a few times in this game. And that was enough to kind of be the nail in the coffin.
Yeah. McConkey's going to do that too, though, especially recently. He's caught fire again a little bit. He had a slow start to the season, but he's still the guy that was a breakout player last year for them. And the linebacker play, like you said, Peyton Wilson was totally fine. I think Patrick Queen, he missed a bunch of tackles again. Honestly, I thought I saw at least 2 or 3. And it's like, again, if you got to do something well on the field, man. And we've had this discussion internally on our Slow Curtain chat. We've had this discussion on the show and writing. At some point, you have to be good at something. And I just don't think he is consistently good at anything except for running and chasing. But even then, sometimes he misses the tackle. So, like, I don't know. I don't know if it's
Shayne, I've got it pulled up right now. Do you know what PFF actually credited him with? 5 missed tackles in this game, which is not uncommon. I mean, I bet, I haven't checked this, but I bet he's got the highest missed tackle rate in the NFL. I can't imagine that anybody's higher than his right. I think he had 15 before this game. So, I mean, it's been really rough in that regard for him for sure. Going back to
the total they haven't credited
that is nuts.
23% missed tackle rate.
I mean, that's bad for a season total, and we're just crossing the halfway mark here.
Yes.
So, going back to the Chargers wide receivers for a second here. I mean, 61 total yards on 15 targets between Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen. I do think the Steelers played those guys really well. The problem is Ladd had a couple really big plays, including that 58-yarder. He also had a touchdown in this game. Overall, solid. Again, it's hard to fault the defense in a game like this.
No, not really.
Defense did what they needed to do.
Yeah.
Sure, there are coverage lapses every now and then, cornerbacks, linebackers, but it was the offense that stole the storyline because they just couldn't do anything with their opportunities and their limited time of possession in this game. All right, Shayne, anything on special teams that you want to note here?
I did want to touch on the secondary real quick.
Go for it.
I think Joey honestly had a good day. I really think he was pretty good. He's up and down, so but like you're happy to get a good day from him. Ramsey was fine. Again, I think the safety transition is going well. I hate to say this. I shouldn't say I hate to say this.
No, I know where you're going. Yeah, go ahead.
James Pierre needs to play until Asante Samuel Jr.
He probably does.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's crazy that we're talking about James Pierre as a starting cornerback in 2025. But good for him for sticking around so long and playing well this year when called upon. Like he's technically now again, this is where PFF can mess with people a little bit because it's a small sample size and he's not a full-time starter, blah, blah, blah. But if you're just going off what they say, he's easily the best defensive back on this team this year in a limited sample size. Is he actually? No. But he's definitely at this point, he can't be worse than Slay. There's just no possible way that he could be. So if Slay's going to miss time and Samuel Jr. needs some time to get ready, I think you got to trot James Pierre out there until one of those two are healthy and ready to go. So,
yeah, Shayne, you could probably count on one hand the number of cornerbacks around the NFL who are better just in a pinch coming off the bench than Pierre. Like that's what he seems to do. He's really good in those situations. And for whatever reason, though, in the small sample that we've seen him and has like a full-time starter, it's not been very good. So he's kind of like one of those basketball players. Your best is a six man coming off the bench.
Like
you're not a full-time
15 minutes, you drop in like 10 points and call it a night. Yeah.
And maybe that's who he is at this stage of his career. He's
Maybe.
29 years old already.
Is,
It doesn't seem
yeah.
like he should be that old. It's just, I remember him floating around just trying to make the team a bit ago,
Yeah.
it seemed like. But
Yeah.
but credit him, because Pierre has been really good when called upon this season.
Yeah.
Any notes from special teams, Shayne?
We got the rare Boswell miss that wasn't because Tomlin trotted him out there in like 10 feet of water or like a 62-yard. Like, so there's that. But again, like, am I going to be mad at Boz? No. Dicker the kicker missed his own doink. So like, just one of those nights, I think, for the kickers. But other than that, I mean, special teams I thought was fine. Not really anything major that I saw there. So.
All right. If you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers podcast and would like, or Pittsburgh Steelers football and like to support the Still Curtain podcast, please consider subscribing to the Still Curtain podcast on YouTube and check out our written work on stillcurtain.com. We appreciate all of your support. All right, Shayne, let's talk Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, got to do it.
He was a problem. He was a problem in this game. And I will say, I mean, you think the box score numbers are bad. We're talking 16 of 31, 161 yards, 5.2 yards per pass in this game, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, sacked 3 times, a 50.6 pass rating. This is Kenny Pickett level stuff, but it's worse than it's actually worse than what the box score numbers would indicate, because he left the opportunity on the table. It really wasn't receivers in this game. We talked about the Calvin Austin drop there. One of those led to an interception for him, but he also didn't deserve the touchdown that he got late in this game. Before the final drive, Shayne, before the final 8-play, 65-yard touchdown drive, where the Chargers were just in prevent defense, essentially in a meaningless action. They scored with like 3 minutes and 36 seconds or whatever left on the clock. Before that, Rodgers was 10 of 23 for, I believe it was, I cut up these stats a little bit ago, 96 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks, and 19.4 passer rating. And even with padding your stats at the end, which obviously doesn't factor heavily into this, but his QBR in this game was a 4.5.
You never want it.
4.5. I mean, that's what you would expect if you rolled Rodgers out here 10 years from now.
Yeah.
At almost like age 40 or 52 and say, go out there and play a game at quarterback. You can probably get a 4.5 QBR.
Again, like, it's hard to even like fathom how truly bad he was in this game, because it's Aaron Rodgers. And like, this is a guy that obviously struggled last year with the Jets for a large part of the season before he kind of turned it on the back half. And it seemed like the back half version of him was the version the Steelers were getting this year through the first 5 or so games. And we're going to talk about it. Not so much over the past 4 or so. Like, he has certainly started to slow down in a lot of ways. And my biggest concern at this point is really not anything to do with like his arm or anything like that, or his accuracy, although that was bad in this game. He just looks scared out there. Like, he legitimately looks scared to take contact. And when you're a quarterback that is in that situation, it doesn't matter how good everything else is around you, because you're expecting to get hit. Like, you start seeing stuff that you're not even really seeing. And I think it started in that Packers game where every time they lined Micah Parsons up in front of him, it's like he just stopped being able to play football. And it's like he was waiting for him to hit him, it felt like, instead of actually playing the game. So if that doesn't get better in some capacity, and we're going to talk about, how we can, like, whether he can do that or whether he's on the right path or not. If that doesn't get better, this is not going to get better on offense either.
And Shayne, I don't want to stereotype here, but I think that this is largely the case for older quarterbacks in the NFL. They don't like to take those hits anymore. Their body takes longer to recover after them. And it's why we see them wear down as the season goes on, Shayne. And that kind of brings me to my next point. Hey, I was thinking about this before the game, because I do think that we didn't talk about Rodgers enough, probably, for his underwhelming performance
because we won
against the Colts, because the Steelers won the game thanks to the 6 takeaways. But he wasn't very good in that game either. And the arrow continues to point down. So now in 4 consecutive games, a month worth of action, Rodgers has decreased in passing yards, yards per attempt, net yards per attempt, passer ratings, and even his touchdowns have gone down in every single game over the last month of football. And I was thinking back to last year and Russell Wilson. This time last year, Shayne, we were all about Russell Wilson. I don't say we were buying into it, but he was at least playing pretty well.
He was making them look smart for putting him in, right?
Yes.
He was doing
he peaked in like that week 13 game against the Bengals where he put up 44 points. And we come to find out it's just because the Bengals have a crappy defense like they do this year. And it was all downhill from there. And I got to share these stats with you, Shayne, and I want to get your thoughts on this. But it is concerning to me because I can see the writing on the walls here with how this is going to end. But Russell Wilson last year, in his first 4 starts with the Steelers as their quarterback, and by the way, Russell Wilson turned 36 last year. Rodgers is obviously older than Wilson, but they both played like old quarterbacks at this stage of their career. Wilson's first 4 games, first 5 games with the Steelers last year, he went 4-1 as a starter. Over his next 7 games, he went 2-5 in that same span. Rodgers 4-1 as a starter, his first 5 games, and he's gone 1-3 in his last 4 games.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson with the Steelers, 225.6 passing yards a game. Aaron Rodgers with the Steelers, 205.9. Russell Wilson, 7.4 yards an attempt. Aaron Rodgers, 6.8. Russell Wilson, 6.4. Adjusted net yards per attempt. Aaron Rodgers, 5.8. Success rate. Russell Wilson, 43.6% success rate. Aaron Rodgers, 43.5% success rate. Completion percentage. Russell Wilson, 63.7. Aaron Rodgers, 66.8. Passer rating. Russell Wilson, 95.6. Aaron Rodgers, 97.2. QBR, 47.9 for Wilson, 44.9 for Rodgers, and even PFF grade, take it with a grain of salt if you want to, but Russell Wilson last year, 79.5 PFF grade. Russell Wilson, 63.6. Rodgers is actually worse in the vast majority of statistics, and you can look at essentially everything. Even advanced metrics, Shayne, are proving that Rodgers is following right in Russell Wilson's footsteps from last year. Is that fair to say? Is it fair to cast that judgment on Rodgers already?
I think you have to for the time being because, again, he's shown over the past month or so that whether it's because of the opponents they're facing, whether it's because of him dealing with whatever he's dealing with in terms of struggling with handling pressure and taking hits, he's starting to slow down the same way Russell Wilson started to slow down in the back half of last year. Now, do I think that it's going to completely bottom out the way that it did with Wilson last year when they went 0-5, including the playoffs, to end the season? Probably not. I think that Rodgers has more left in him as a thrower of the football than Wilson did. And I think if he can settle himself down and start to play just with more confidence and more willingness to take hits, which, again, it's hard to ask a guy who's 41 to do that, but that's what he's going to have to do. I think there's a path to it getting better. Whereas with Wilson, I think the jury was kind of out after the first 5 or 6 games for the Steelers with him, and then teams were able to kind of feast on him the rest of the way. So he's definitely not been any better than Wilson was through the same period of time that he was last year. But I think there is more of a path to fix it, at least potentially.
Yeah, it's very concerning to say the least. Obviously, I don't expect him to play as poorly as he's played these past few games here, particularly in week 10 on Sunday Night Football. But when you're old, I mean, there might not be a bounce back from this, Shayne. We got to come to that reality that
it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, at his age, and considering that he's got 3 completed air yards per attempt this year, I mean, he's barely completing the ball past the line of scrimmage. I mean, it's so much of his is the short passing game. And I think that that's concerning. I just don't know what to even expect moving forward. I see so many parallels between Wilson last year. And by the way, Wilson finished the season in his last 5 games, counting the playoff game against the Ravens, averaging 14 points a game, leading the Steelers to 14 points a game, and going 0-5 in that stretch. Obviously, the Steelers can't afford to have that happen. They will miss the playoffs by a mile if Rodgers does that this year.
For sure.
And that was, it's just not a good situation, Shayne. And so what I would ask then is, should the Steelers bring Rodgers back in 2026? Ironically, these conversations were being had the week leading up to week 10. And so, I mean, it sounds like, and maybe they still do want to bring the Rodgers back for the 2026 season. Is there an advantage at all in even having that discussion until after the year?
No, I think until after the year, because I think for a player like Aaron Rodgers, who is going to be 42 soon and is someone who's very much at the end of his career, whether it's this year or next or whenever, you have to see what he looks like at the end of the season. Like, that's when it matters most to me, is what does he look like by then? Because that's the guy that he's going to end up being when the time actually matters. right? When the games start to matter, that's who you want to see what he's like. Now, if you look at the Jets last year, you'd say, oh, well, he was really good at the end of the season. He was better at the end of the season. And you could argue a million reasons for why that is. But at this point, like if he doesn't look a lot more like he did the first 4 games or 5 games of this year from this point on, then I think it's fair to say that he probably should hang it up. Maybe honestly for his own sake, because if he can't play football the way that he always has, even if it's to a lesser degree, I'm not asking him to go out there and scramble 12 times a game or do all that or play extend constantly. But if he's not willing to do any of it anymore or just can't do it, then not only should the Steelers not sign him, I think he should just quit at that point.
Yeah, and I think, Shayne, what we're getting to is we see that the mobility isn't there anymore. He can't throw the ball on the run like he used to, can't get out of trouble like he used to. If he's not going to be an elite pocket passer who's fearless to stand in there and take the occasional big hit, which again, all quarterbacks don't like doing that usually, then what is there about his game that makes him better than the average quarterback around the NFL? Like there has to be something. And the problem is I feel like there's nothing right now because he's not willing to hold onto the football very long. And he's also not very good when he does scramble. And so that creates a big problem. You got to be really good at one of those two things. I think that it can work for set quarterbacks. It can't work for Rodgers at this stage of his career. I mean, you take away one of the gifts he had for most of 2 decades where he was one of the best ever at extending the play, chucking the ball down the field. Like he just doesn't have that ability anymore. I put on the all-22, Shayne, and his pocket presence, I think, was the most concerning thing, even more than his accuracy was very poor. But his pocket presence in this game where he looks scared, he looks skittish. I mean, you talk about the safety that he took in this game. That's the one direction you couldn't go. I mean, that's the one direction you could go is literally back into Fawatanu's guy over there. You could have climbed the pocket. You could have escaped to the left.
You could have done literally anything other than that. That's the thing.
There were a few other occasions too, where he escaped a clean pocket. It was getting a little bit of push against it, but you still had a U shape there. You could have taken a little bit deeper of a drop. Instead, he kind of just tucks the ball and takes a few steps forward in the pocket and just kind of runs into a defender. It's like you don't have that pocket presence even at this stage of your career because you are afraid. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
I mean, again, like when you're 41, am I going to sit here and say that I would want to be I wouldn't want to take him now, but that's because I don't play, professional football. But if I was 41, I certainly wouldn't want to get hit by any of those guys, but also that's what the job is. Like you're getting paid to do that. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how it works.
Yeah.
So if he can't do it anymore, or if he's not willing to, that again, should the Steelers bring him back? No, because he shouldn't come back then either. Like it should be a mutual thing at that point if this is what it's going to look like.
And old is old, Shayne, but we are just for what it's worth, we're a few weeks away from his 42nd birthday at this point. Comparing his completed air yards to, I've got it pulled up right now, a quarterback like Drake May, 5.3 completed air yards per attempt for May, 3.0 for Rodgers. That's worse than May had in his rookie season last year. I mean, it's not good because he's checked down Charlie right now. I think we see that just so often where it's 3-step drop, balls out, throw into the flats, throw him behind. The Steelers in this game, Shayne, you can look at his passing chart on Next Gen Stats. Rodgers had more passes at or behind the line of scrimmage than he did over the middle of the field. Yeah. Who does that kind of remind you of in recent years? Like we killed like Kenny Pickett for that kind of stuff, and Mitch Trubisky. We're kind of just we can't escape this. I don't know what it is. You just can't escape it, even though that's not been Rodgers' game over the course of his career. It's who he's becoming on the Steelers. Maybe it's the Tomlin factor, the Arthur Smith factor, the conservative play overall, and the fact that he's aging, but it's not good. And to answer the question, Shayne, should the Steelers bring him back? No. At this rate, absolutely not. There's no benefit of doing that. Even as a bridge quarterback, like you could probably get away with someone else who is going to be at least a little bit more willing to hold on to the football a half a second longer, or more willing to throw the ball over the middle of the field. I just don't see any advantage at this point. I would let the season play out and then decide from there. If he turns things around, if he looks more like he did maybe earlier in the season a little bit, then you can consider it at least. Right now, I would say it's a resounding no.
Yeah, I think can't really take any other stance right now, at least. Again, I'm saying right now, hoping he turns around, obviously, but this is tough to watch the last couple games.
It has been. Shayne, I want to move on and talk about the wide receiver problem that continues to be an issue for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was not all gung-ho about a wide receiver trade before the deadline like many were. I didn't think that Jakobi Meyers was a needle mover. I liked Rashid Shaheed better, but I still didn't think that was the type of receiver they need. They already have a go ball guy in DK Metcalf who they probably don't use enough in that regard. I think DK is honestly best finding him some space and letting him work after the catch, which Steelers definitely don't do that enough often with him. But the receiver issue continues to persist. We talked about Calvin Austin here. I think his time needs to end. I'm not low on Calvin Austin. I just think he's kind of is what he is. I think he's a respectable wide receiver 3 at this stage of his career. I think he's had enough time to prove himself. Obviously, his freshman season with the Steelers was redshirted due to a foot injury. But these last 2 years now, in the sample that we have seen, it's just not efficient enough. It's not good enough overall. What does he offer you in terms of a blocker, everything like that? And so I did have some stats pulled up here, Shayne, on Calvin Austin. He had a really good opening game with the Steelers against the Jets, 70 yards and a touchdown in that game. But since then, Austin has had 30 targets, turned those into 17 receptions for 167 yards. That's only 5.5 yards per target. That's a very poor number for a wide receiver. You can get away with that as like a running back, but as a wide receiver, that's a poor number. 1 touchdown during that span. He's also had 3 interceptions when targeted, Shayne. And I think part of that has to do with the hands. Part of it has to do with the catch radius. We know one of them, he kind of tried to extend the play. Didn't do a great job on that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's tough, right? Like that's a catch that you have to make, though. Like you do. I know you're 5'7.5".
Yeah.
I know you're like whatever, but it's weird. Like you can't be making drops like that, especially when they lead to interceptions. We've already seen it happen a couple times this year where his ball skills, lack thereof, in some cases, were leading to interceptions. So.
Yeah, and the unfortunate reality of the situation right now is, since week 1, Shayne, Aaron Rodgers has a 44.0 passer rating when targeting Calvin Austin. I mean, that's just not good. Some of it's his fault. Some of it's Rodgers' fault. Passer rating is a two-way street. Can't blame it all on Calvin Austin, but it hasn't been very good. And I just think that it's time to turn the page. Counter argument here now. Now, again, the context is important. Roman Wilson has played a lot in garbage times or got a lot of his production late in the game. But Roman Wilson, in his last 5 games with the Steelers, caught 10 of 13 passes for 142 yards, 10.9 yards per target, which is more than double Calvin Austin, in 2 touchdowns during that span. He has a 151.2 passer rating when targeted. Night and day difference between the two in terms of that. And not all of it is garbage production, because a few weeks ago against the Packers on Sunday Night Football, Roman Wilson had a really nice 45-yard reception on the first drive in that game. Got to get him some more opportunities. I think that it is time to demote Calvin Austin and promote Roman Wilson.
Yeah, I think you have to get him more involved at this point. I think you have to. Like, again, Austin it doesn't do enough for you, especially as a receiver too. I think he can play a role for an offense. I really do. I don't want to say that he's useless by any means, but it's just you're asking too much of a guy of his style and just his play, the way that he is going to win. But at the same time, like, I understand Roman Wilson hasn't had a long time to kind of get things going. He hasn't had the opportunities that even Austin has had in the last couple of years of his career. But at the same time, like, Metcalf cannot be the only guy. And I talked about this when they brought him in. I talked about the fact that I wasn't a big fan of it because I didn't view him as a true wide receiver 1 because of the way he plays and the way he wins. And unfortunately, that's kind of been what's happened, right? Like, he's really good at a few things, but it's hard to funnel targets to a guy that wins the way that he does and that is good in the ways that he's good. And when you can't funnel targets to your number 1 receiver, that's okay if you have a collection of guys that you can spread the ball around to, but they're not doing that. Like, they're not doing a good enough job of getting the ball out to actual guys who can make explosive plays. The tight end situation is what it is. Like, you can funnel targets through those guys, but they're not efficient enough right now, especially Jonnu Smith. Darnell Washington can't seem to get involved for 2 weeks in a row. Freiermuth has been better recently, but in general not been as productive this year. There's really no one else you can go to except for Roman Wilson. Like, you have to find a way to get him involved more. And I don't know how they're going to do it outside of just honestly targeting him more, because I think you've said it and you've made videos about this. He's open a lot. He really is. Now, obviously, how much of those routes are like real routes that he's supposed to be like, expecting the ball. I don't know. But if he's going to be able to get open and separate better than really anyone else on this roster, probably, you need to at least give him a shot to be able to get 5, 6, maybe even 7 targets a game.
Yeah, Shayne, there have been very few routes this season where Roman Wilson has been clearly the number one read on the play. I think that needs to change. I think that this guy can separate. You see that on film. Try to get him the ball more often in earlier in the game and see what happens. I'm not claiming that Roman Wilson is going to be the long-term answer for the Steelers.
Right. There's no way to know.
I mean, how do you figure those things out if you're not willing to use players? Like, this is the frustrating part is you got to be willing to use him. Maybe he is boneheaded, like Tomlin said that after the fumble play. Like, I think he's trying to make a lot happen. We don't see what happens behind the scenes. We don't see how he's practicing or whatever. But I can tell you, he's working his butt off on film as a blocker. As a special teams gunner this past week. He had a couple of really nice coverage plays on special teams, coverage defense plays on special teams. I would give him the opportunity. I would say, all right, we're going to make it a point to get you 7, 8 targets in this game, and we're going to see what you do with this. I think that's where the Steelers are. And if they can find that they have a stable option next to Metcalf, because they don't have it with anybody else in the roster, I think that's been basically proven at this point. If they can find that with Wilson, I think it would alleviate pressure from Metcalf. Now, ultimately, do I think the Steelers are going to draft a receiver high? Yeah, I think that they got a lot of draft picks. It's been a long time coming. They're probably going to invest at least a 2nd or 3rd round pick into the receiver position next year. And a 1st round pick isn't out of the question either.
Yeah.
So obviously, we're looking at quarterback. But you have to find out what you have right now. I would not wait until the end of the season, see what you have, because I am encouraged by the film. He's been grading out well. The film speaks volumes. You watch the All-22 from the Sky Cam, and you can see that he is getting open. It's a matter of getting the targets at this point. And again, to me, Shayne, it might even be a bigger argument against Calvin Austin at this point than it is in favor of Roman Wilson.
Right.
Austin simply hasn't done enough with the opportunities, and he's not been worth throwing to, quite frankly, more often than not.
Yeah, and again, if that was different, then sure, like I would understand if Wilson wasn't heavily involved, because this is probably an offense the way they want to run it that only 2 receivers can really thrive at a time at most, right? But he's not. Like, Austin's been both banged up and inconsistent when he's been out there, and as much as I'd like the guy to be more productive and be better, he just hasn't really been. And we also have to acknowledge, like, if you want DK to work, if you want him to consistently be able to make plays, you have to threaten somewhere else on the field. Like, defenses have to be able to be forced into actually guarding someone else. Because right now they don't care about guarding Kenneth Gainwell or Jonnu Smith or whoever, because they know they're going to get like 5 yards of reception. They don't care about that. They'll take that every day of the week. If you're going to be able to free DK up, it's going to have to be because Roman Wilson is a threat to go for 40 on you. And he's going to be a threat to be able to get the first down, conversions on 3rd down because you leave him alone. Like, you have to make defenses understand that if they leave him one-on-one, there's a good chance he's going to win. And I think that could be the case. I really think that could happen, but we won't know until they actually try.
Yeah, Shayne, and unfortunately, this DK Metcalf contract in trade, round pick, it's going to look really, really bad if they don't find a way to start getting him the ball more often, have him be more efficient, more productive. We've seen flashes of it this year. I think about the post route over the middle of the field and just dust past the entire secondary.
Vikings,
yeah, I mean, that's what we need to see more frequently. We have not been seeing it. And so who can do that? Who can step up? My vote would be obviously go to Roman Wilson at this point. What have you got to lose? Nobody else is stepping up to the plate at wide receiver for you. All right. From the highs, the heartbreaks, in every headline, this is the Still Curtain Podcast, your source for daily Pittsburgh Steelers talk, powered by stillcurtain.com and the voices at Fansided. All right, Shayne, let's talk about Steelers versus Bengals coming up here in Week 11, the rematch game, if you will, for Pittsburgh. That was a disheartening loss the first time around. You don't want to see that happening. It was arguably the worst game plan that any team has had this season so far. I know they tried different looks in coverage. It wasn't that you tried cover 1, cover 4, whatever. Stop Jamar Chase. You play inside out on him. Don't let him get those quick slants. He was killing you with the quick slants all game long. You can't let that be the case this time around. We also had a Joe Burrow storyline develop this week where man, if Steelers played this game any later, there's a chance Burrow would have been able to play. That's not going to be the case. We're going to get Joe Flacco revenge game here against him. But Burrow is on track to come back sooner than expected. The latest report is possibly by Thanksgiving, is what he said, I think, from his own mouth. So we'll see if that indeed proves to be the case. The Bengals sit at 3-6. If they get a win here, they're not technically out of it yet, although things are looking very grim. You got to be great. You got to be excellent at this point on, Shayne. Maybe that would be an incentive to bring back Burrow to the field sooner. Shayne, I personally think this could work out perfectly in Pittsburgh's favor. It's like, all right, you avoided Burrow twice this year. You're going to avoid Trey Hendrickson twice this year, which is another storyline we can talk about.
Yeah.
But you're avoiding Burrow, but Burrow is not going to be held off long enough to avoid, or for the Baltimore Ravens to avoid playing him potentially twice this season. And so the Bengals still could get their superstar quarterback in time to steal maybe one win against the Ravens, potentially two. I mean, it works out in Pittsburgh's favor. The chips are falling their way. They just haven't been able to capitalize on it very well.
No, they haven't. That's the thing, is like, if they came away with the Chargers win, and I talked about, like, I think that was their path to winning the division. Because if you beat the Chargers, you have the Bengals coming up, who, again, won't have Joe Burrow, won't have Trey Hendrickson. If you can't beat them at home after what they did to you on Thursday night, then you don't deserve to make the playoffs or win the division anyway. But you do that, you're sitting then at that point at 7-3. You got the Bears then, which the Bears are good, but also very, very, very odd. I don't like, they could lose or win against anyone. It feels like they had to have a huge comeback to beat the Giants of all teams.
Yeah.
Like, so you probably can beat them. You'd be sitting at 8-3. Like, everything looks good. Now you're 5-4, and you're facing a Bengals team that, as bad as they are, they can still throw the football. They could still play offense. They showed it against you. That was their kind of, coming out party this year that's led to this explosive offense we've seen, under Joe Flacco. And as much as I'm glad we're avoiding Burrow, would first week off of injury Joe Burrow be that much better than Joe Flacco's been for them, like, realistically? And that's nothing against Joe Burrow. I'm not going to sit there and act like he isn't one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But, like, we've had decent amount of success against him overall. Like, not anything crazy. We haven't shut him down by any means, but I don't know how much better it is to face Joe Flacco based on our track record against him.
That's true. I mean, I don't understand what it is, but Tomlin was obviously did not want to play against.
He's a veteran. He knows what's going on.
It's frustrating. This is probably what's going to happen is the Steelers will show up and they'll look all good and fans will get excited. And then we remember that the Cincinnati Bengals allow 33.3 points a game, dead last in the NFL. They allow 426 yards a game, dead last by a mile in the NFL. Like, this defense is terrible. So keep that in mind as you watch the game. Like, I totally expect Rodgers to play 3 times better than he did last week. But it's just going to be hard to know, Shayne, if that is for real or if it's just because the Bengals are the Bengals. We saw Russell Wilson put up 414 yards and a couple of touchdowns against the Bengals last year in week 13. So don't be shocked if the Steelers get one of those games that gets you pumped up here. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about some of the biggest matchups here. I would have said Trey Hendrickson was one of them. He's not going to play. Jamar Stewart also out this week, it looks like, from the latest report. Jamar Chase.
Yep.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And how many times has Terrell Austin been fooled now at this point, Shayne?
Too many times for me to acknowledge, and I won't.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
so
that's the case. They've got to find a way to contain him in this game. Like I said, let T. Higgins get his bag. Don't let Jamar Chase do it. You have to get Flacco off of his first read, because if you do, that could give the pass rushers enough time to get there. That ball was out so fast that he negated any pass rush the Steelers had last time. You've got to get up. You got to play press. You got to play inside, outside leverage on him. Don't let him beat you on the quick slants. It's the quick slants and the outs is just constant. It was constant last game. You've got to find a way to keep him in check. No, none of that 23 targets, 16 receptions, 160 yards type of game.
Again, like, I still cringe thinking about that game when we were watching it, because I'm like, how can you, like, there's no way you don't know what they're doing. I refuse to believe that. Like, I don't care. You can play 50 different coverages. You can make up coverages on the sideline.
You
for
know
all I
where the
care.
ball's going.
It doesn't matter what coverage you play if he could just run a slant and catch the ball every time. Like, I'm sorry, he should have had like 19 catches. I think he had like 2 or 3 drops. It felt like in that game too. It was one of those situations where it was like Groundhog Day. Every time they threw the ball, I'm like, oh, there's Jamar Chase again. I guess they're going to throw to him again. And it just felt like the same thing every time. And at the end of the day, I know how great Jamar Chase is. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they shouldn't allow him to catch the ball. But there comes a point when I don't care how good a player is, you can't allow someone to be targeted 23 times in a regulation game. Like you can't do that in 60 minutes of football. Allow someone to be targeted 23 times.
Unreal.
It's insane. You have to deter them at some point. I don't care how you do it. You can play 4 guys on them at that point, at least just so they don't throw to him. Like at least I feel better about that. And I'm still mad. I'm already starting to rant about it. I still cannot believe when the game was on the line, he was open by 30 yards on that crossing route that no one picked him up on for some reason, and they just won the game essentially on it because he just got in the field goal. Like how that happened in a gotta have situation, that's the type of stuff that gets people fired usually in this sport, not in Pittsburgh. But like again, what are we doing here? I don't know.
So inexcusable. I mean, that might have been the most egregious defensive play in all of football this year is that play where you had to have it, and there's nobody covering the best receiver in the NFL. There were other plays too, Shane. You go back and watch the all 22 from their first matchup. Chase was running wide open across the middle of the field, and he didn't get targeted even. Like there was meat on the bone left for Joe Flacco there in his connection with Jamar Chase. It was that bad. And so that is obviously the biggest matchup, the biggest storyline to watch here. Shane, what others do you want to highlight here? Anything else?
I mean, again, like the Bengals defense, pretty much everyone who plays for the Steelers against that defense, like you have to have a big game this week. I don't even really care. Like, I don't care how much you win by. I don't care about any of this. If you do not look legitimately good, and it doesn't mean you have to put up like 40 points like some teams have, or you don't have to put up 500 yards or anything crazy. But if you don't move the ball consistently against this defense, then at that point, I do think it's fair to assume that this offense is going nowhere and that we are trending towards like truly bottoming out on that side of the football, which is so disappointing because we finally felt like that wasn't happening this year and that, oh man, the defense is bad now, but they'll figure it out probably. And they sort of have. But now if the offense starts to bottom out too, it's like, all right, I guess we can't have nice things at this point is what it would feel like.
Yeah. And again, this defense, I feel like is going to be 100% reliant on how well you can cover. Can you cover for 2.5 seconds or longer? Because if you can, defense is going to do their job. But I agree with you, Shane. It's concerning to say the least. Bengals can put up points on this team. They put up points.
Already have.
But every other team, though, has had success offensively against them. Almost every team this year, besides like the Browns in week 1, has been able to put up like at least 27 points on the Bengals. The Steelers have to be able to follow suit, I think. And unfortunately, that's maybe what it takes to win this game against a 3-6 divisional opponent with the worst defense in football. So, Shane, with that, if you have nothing else, let's get to our game predictions here. And I'm interested to see, how do you think the Steelers game is going to go against the Bengals this time around? And consider now, Cincinnati has had 2 weeks to prepare. They're coming off their bye. They've had 2 weeks to prepare to play this Pittsburgh Steelers again and to go up 2-0 on them in the head-to-head this year. What do you think is going to happen, Jay?
Well, I'm making this prediction partially based on just how this team operates and what they do. And I know what they do to us every year, right? They're going to win this game because they have to keep track with their winning season goals. And they're going to keep in the fight until the very end, probably week 18. And that's when things might not go their way. But for now, I don't think this Bengals team is good enough to beat really any team twice that they're going to play on. Even the Browns, I'd be surprised if they beat them twice. I think what's going to end up happening, though, is because the defense is still going to struggle against this offense, because I don't think they have an answer for Jamar Chase. And unfortunately, Joe Flacco, too. I think it's going to be a little bit better because it can't get much worse than the first game was in terms of how they handled things. But it's still going to be like a drag-out fight. Like, I think what's going to happen is it's going to be like a 31-28 game where the Steelers win maybe on the last drive of the game with a field goal. Like very similar to what the Bengals did, but just the opposite, right? Where the Steelers end up getting the ball last instead of the Bengals, and they go ahead and kick a field goal to win it. Like that's what it really feels like it's going to be.
Shayne, we are 100% on the same page here. I was going with the similar score prediction. I've got the Steelers 30-27. I think the Steelers, they get to the 30-point mark against the league's worst defense.
Right.
The offense has a bounce back game in this one, but I think it's going to have to come out of necessity because the Bengals are going to hang around and they're going to be able to get theirs on Pittsburgh's defense. So that's what we have. I mean, it's unfortunately, this is the state of the team right now. You'd like to have them be able to blow this team out of the water. I don't know if that's going to happen. We will find out. All right. You guys in the comment section, let us know what you think of the Steelers versus Bengals matchup in week 11 here. You can follow Shayne on X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Steel Curtain podcast wherever you get your podcast. Also, check us out on YouTube or ask Alexa to play the Steel Curtain podcast. And thanks for listening to the Steel Curtain podcast.